Hi, you're listening to Linda Pinizzato at the Condo Expert, sponsored by the Hayes FM. We're speaking with Saskia Matheson, Director of Risk Management for Allstate Insurance Company of Canada. You know, Saskia, we've had a little bit of conversation. We touched about liability, but we really didn't go right into it. So I want to touch, because liability, boy, that's a huge risk. I mean, getting away from just, changing laminate floorings and maybe replaceable items. Replaceable items can be replaced. I always make that comment, if somebody comes and robs my place, hey, I'll put a sign on everything that I want them to take.
Absolutely.
I don't know if I should have said that. Say, oh, yeah, you can have this one. It's all good. If it's
Sure.
a 50-inch, no, I want the 80 now,
Sure.
the 80-inch big screen.
Wow, absolutely. We are obviously attached to our belongings, but it's not the same thing as if somebody is injured. If somebody is injured in your apartment, in your condo, then obviously that's your liability. But you can, in fact, end up in a bad situation if somebody is injured in the common areas of the building. And most people would think, even if they understand really the difference between the unit and the condo corporation coverage, if something horrible were to happen, like somebody were to drown in the pool, I mean, that's one of those nightmare scenarios. Does the condo corporation have sufficient liability coverage in that case? And Linda, you mentioned earlier, if it's an older building, have they kept their policy up to date? Have they increased the liability? Because if, for example, they're only carrying, let's say, $2-3 million liability, and the court judgment is for more than that, the additional amount will get assessed back to the individual unit holders. So in fact, here's a situation where, as a condo unit owner, you're assessed with a portion of a claim that occurred in the common areas of the building that had nothing to do with you other than your legal responsibility as a unit holder.
Wow, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
That is very dangerous. That is something, that point, as you know, I've personally been representing COA in all the Condo Act reviews. Right from, September of 2012 when the McGuinty government announced it. That I will tell you that is one item that hasn't hit the table. Actually, I'm very surprised that the review didn't include anything to do with liability and fire insurances, because that could really turn not only a building value upside down, but the unit owners.
Well, it's
maybe there needs
very
to be
lucky.
Something that's excellent.
Well, and as I say, we come back to making sure that the individual unit owners are prepared. The more questions they ask, the more likely it is that the condo corporation is going to ensure that they've got the right coverage in play. We're lucky in Canada that we're not a place of big, massive court settlements, but when something tragic happens, there's going to be liability, and that's going to be something you need to be concerned about as a unit holder.
Oh, absolutely. Well, again, it can get really away, and it goes back to the trust that is going on with the board of directors. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you should be, to some degree, trusting them, but trusting somebody doesn't mean that you don't do your due diligence and sort of, double check those facts and figures at your annual general meeting to find out exactly what it is that you've got.
Yes, and the item that we are seeing actually a lot of right now is the condo corporation increasing their deductible. So I think for years and years and years, the deductible was maybe, it was $10,000, it was $15,000, and the vast majority of condominium owners never even thought about that part of their personal coverage. But recently, within the past, I'd say 2 years, we've seen a real escalation of condominium corporations of the deductible they're carrying on their policy. So that's something, even if you did your job 2 years ago and you looked at your policy, or when you bought it, that's something to make sure you have that gap covered. If I were to say the big takeaway for folks is make sure that you have enough of what's called loss adjustment coverage and deductible allocation to the unit holder. You've got enough coverage on your personal policy to make sure it covers that gap with the condo corporation.
So if an owner had a real situation where they had to vacate out of the building.
Right.
Okay, and I know that happened at a condo building actually on Yonge Street.
Yes.
And that became a real issue because they weren't out for just a week. They were out for an extended period of time.
Right.
So condo insurance, like your homeowner policies, does it cover some kind of coverage so that, you're not living in it. You still have to pay your mortgages. I mean, the banks aren't going to say, hey, sorry, you can't live there, but you don't have to pay this month.
Right. And in fact, there's a coverage. We use everything in my business, Linda. Everything's got an acronym. And so you'll hear it called ALE, or Additional Living Expenses. And so that's a coverage, again, you want to make sure that you've got in your policy. Talk to your insurance professional. Come and talk to an Allstate agent. We'd be happy if you were to do that, and make sure that you have a sufficient additional living expenses. That's also a case if you are a person who owns a condo and rents it out to somebody else. You can be accountable in that circumstances to make sure that your tenant has a place to live.
Okay, so then actually you could, and what about your lost wages on rental?
Yes.
Is that something that's covered then?
You can purchase that coverage. A lot of those are kind of, they're made up of bits and pieces of coverage to make sure that you have the perfect package for your circumstance. But you can in fact buy some coverage if for a peril, not if the tenant leaves your apartment empty or your condo empty, but let's say the building is closed for repairs due to a fire, and now you can't rent that unit out. You can in fact purchase coverage to cover that loss of income.
So then you also cover the tenant insurance. As well.
We would ask, actually, the tenant really should get their own insurance.
But does Allstate offer a package for tenant insurance?
You bet we do.
Fabulous.
We absolutely do. Yes.
So we've got everybody covered here. So everybody's got to contact Allstate Insurance of Canada so that they can get all the coverage that they need. Okay, so tenants can have their own insurance. Now, one quick question is sometimes tenants will have, or even a condo owner, for instance, they'll have a roommate.
Right.
What happens in that case of a roommate? Not anybody that's legally a tenant, may not even be registered with the property management company. I mean, technically, property management should have a record of everyone that's living in the building.
Well, yes. And of course, your roommate's belongings, they're not an insured person under your policy. So their belongings are in fact not covered under your tenant's policy. They either should have their own policy or, some other protection for their belongings. But often the case with a roommate, maybe they don't have that much in the way of belonging. But remember that your policy doesn't cover them, and then you shouldn't say, that's okay, I've got you covered, because you don't.
So that's something to think about, because if you do have someone staying over, for an extended period of time, especially too if you don't have them registered down in property management, that could be a huge issue.
Yes,
just on the liability side of things.
That's right. Yes.
Because they're technically not supposed to be there, and depending on how the lease reads, that could be another issue. There's a lot of intricacies here, isn't there? I mean, just to make sure that all the pieces of the puzzle fit properly for major protection.
Well, and if you think about particularly with condominiums, I think we were mentioning it earlier, it's an interesting ownership situation. You are living in close with other people and in conjunction with that corporation. It makes sense. It's going to be a little intricate. Linda, the work that you guys are doing at the Owners Association to make all this more clear for condo owners is a big benefit. And then in the, while we're waiting for those things to be the law, to be the end, ask a lot of questions. That's the best protection that a condo owner can have.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. I think the key thing, too, is that with condominiums, that relaxed atmosphere, we find a lot of apathy. And this is one thing that we're really trying to change. And what we're also finding is last week we had a young gentleman who was a young adult in his mid-20s, and he was on the show. And we're an internship with students at universities and so on. Because, the process of learning all this, as you said earlier, and I mentioned as well, is that it's not once you've moved in and you've been in a condo for a year or two. It's actually learning all of this stuff beforehand. I mean, if you're going to go out and start shopping for which, say laptop that you want to buy, you should also go out shopping. And once you call your Allstate insurance agent, they can customize the package to your needs.
Well, think about, you mentioned about a laptop. Do you know anybody who's recently bought, a large screen TV? Think about the kind of research that people are going to put into getting the right TV. Think how little research most people put into buying the right insurance policy, which, by the way, protects that big screen TV in the event of a problem.
Isn't it that case?
Sure.
It really is. Like I find, people are always laughing because as a realtor, I find that I go into a total education process first. It makes my job easier.
Sure.
If people understand everything that they need to know, the decision process is easy to make.
Yes.
Because there's no way that someone's going to be able to sell me anything without me understanding everything. And, the fact that you've taken this initiative and stepped forward and say, okay, fine, these are the circumstances. Allstate is taking a proactive approach here to not only bring in the contests, so to create a better environment of awareness. That's the other thing, too, is, you are a community. And the last thing you want to do is have claims going on within your building, and now everybody's in the elevator hating each other.
Sure.
And everybody's pointing fingers at each other. And the people that don't have protection are blaming the people that do have, or pointing fingers at them. Or who knows what kind of animosity could come about when people have to start reaching into their pockets on claims and problems and things that have come about. And yet, even though it could be their own fault because they have not gone ahead and bought condo insurance,
right?
Not everybody takes the blame.
Right. Well, in fact,
and
probably,
that's where the problem is. They don't. They'll say, okay, fine. You know what? I just didn't know. Well, excuse me. Why didn't you know? I
Sure.
mean, you can't hold hands all the time. Information awareness.
Yes. And of course, you mentioned about, how do we stop that animosity? Two things, right? Which is know your own insurance needs. But again, that person in your building who looks after these items and really many ways make sure the claim doesn't happen in the first place, which is, again, that great condo hero who's looking after the building, who's making sure even something small like the front lobby isn't got puddles of slippery water where somebody could slip and fall and there's a liability claim. That just the guy who keeps the lobby in great repair can be one of your best protections and of that great community that you've lived into to ensure it doesn't turn into a problem community.
That's the key thing.
Right.
You have to go home enjoying where you live. It's not just a case of, enjoying your own unit. So, when you're walking into your building, are you looking around? Are you seeing that everything is done beautifully? And then you can equate that same beautification into your own unit and be able to have that lovely lifestyle, harmonious community lifestyle. And, most insurance claims, honestly, especially if they're big ones with buildings and people aren't covered.
Right.
And that's why it's so important for condo owners, condo investors, and tenants, all three of you out there, contact Allstate, get your insurance. So, Saskia, can you give out an email or a website, domain names, or information of a contact approach for people that want to maybe contact Allstate?
Sure. Our website is allstate.ca, so www.allstate.ca. If you go in there, by the way, you can click on the Condo Hero. It's /Condo Hero. You can see all the details about the contest. And, it's not just, it's going to be bragging rights, Linda, for this contest, but there's also money on the table. $2,500 for the winning entrant and a matching $2,500 for the hero that they're nominating. So that's really important. We also have a site you can get in through something called the goodhandsadvice.ca. Not only is there a lot of information there about what you need to know about condo insurance, but you can also look at a lot of other important information, whether it's about car insurance, whether it's about young drivers, distracted driving, all of those areas. We'd love for people to go and hang out at the allstate.ca website.
And that's a key thing. If they've got car insurance, they can get homeowners insurance. I'm sure they could get some kind of fantastic coverage for both. There may very well be discounts if you've got two policies in the same company.
Absolutely. And if you think about, some people we find obviously car insurance is a more expensive proposition than maybe a tenant's policy, but we're happy to give discounts when you come to us with all of your insurance needs. That's it's your loyalty to us and so our loyalty to you. But really, Linda, we think that an insurance policy It is the best purchase that we and you hope you never actually have to use, except for that great peace of mind at night.
Oh, well, that's valuable. That's invaluable. You do know that lack of sleep causes aging, and none of us want to go there. Okay, like, I'm planning on living till I'm 100, and I'm planning on being feisty right up until that time. Which brings to mind, when I was approached by Allstate to be a judge for the Condo Hero contest.
Yes,
I was very honored. I think that the recognition of bringing that forefront of community feeling and recognition, nothing bothers me more, is, when people like, for instance, the concierges and property managers and so on that are doing great jobs in buildings, sometimes, to some degree, it can almost be a thankless job. If things aren't exactly, or different personalities that go on in buildings, because,
Sure.
You've got so many different personalities, different cultures, different ages, different life expectations, different, like everything is different, but you all have to live together.
Right.
There's so many different variables, but everybody has to live together. So therefore, there's got to be a level of respect and recognition. And the Condo Hero brings that to the forefront. And I think it's so incredibly important to create a positive atmosphere. That to me is positive. Even if you're bothered about something, you can say what you're bothered about, but you can still maintain a positive attitude.
Sure. And with the growth of condominiums, if anybody who drives in Toronto, Mississauga along, you can see a whole, almost a separate city growing up of condominiums. And we need those to be a community, not just a series of buildings. And the work that you're doing and the work that those condo heroes are doing to make those communities instead of just buildings of units.
Well, exactly. Over 1/2 of construction today is condominiums. So we're going to leave you with that thought. It's Linda Pinizzato at the Condo Expert, sponsored by Hayes FM. We'll be right back.